In the wild and unruly tapestry of 1990s celebrity culture, few couples burned as brightly and destructively as Johnny Depp and Kate Moss. Their relationship was the perfect storm of beauty, fame, excess, and emotional chaos, captivating the public and tabloids alike while leaving a trail of chaos in its wake. Together, they epitomized the sex, drugs, and rock and roll ethos that defined a generation, yet behind the glamorous magazine covers and paparazzi photos was a love affair so volatile it threatened to consume them both. This was no fairy tale romance. It was a collision of two troubled souls spiraling through fame, addiction, and heartbreak, their passion igniting an explosive bond that neither would fully recover from. Johnny Depp, already an icon of cinematic cool by the early 1990s, had transformed himself from a teen heartthrob on 21 Jump Street into a bona fide movie star with roles in Edward Scissorhands, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, and Benny and June. Brooding, enigmatic, and allergic to Hollywood conformity, Depp exuded a magnetism that drew women and directors alike. At the same time, Kate Moss was revolutionizing the modeling industry. Discovered at the age of 14, she broke the mold of the curvaceous supermodels who dominated the 80s with her waifish frame and haunting stare. Moss quickly became the face of Heroin Chic, a fashion trend that glamorized thinness, fragility, and a certain reckless detachment from life. By the time their paths crossed in 1994, both were at the height of their powers, and already carrying emotional scars that would shape the turbulent love story to come. They met at Café Tabac in New York City, introduced by mutual friend Naomi Campbell. The spark was instant. Depp was 31, Moss just 20. Despite the age gap, they were drawn to each other like magnets, two rebels bound by fame and a taste for hedonism. In many ways, they saw reflections of themselves in each other. Depp had already navigated a string of high-profile relationships, including a tumultuous engagement to Winona Ryder that ended just 2 years earlier. Moss, though young, had been through her own storms, growing up in a broken home and being thrust into the cutthroat world of fashion while still a teenager. Both were no strangers to the spotlight, and both were already slipping into the darker temptations it offered. The moment they connected, it was as if the universe had thrown gasoline on a fire. Their chemistry was undeniable, and their love burned with an intensity that bordered on destructive. Friends and insiders described them as inseparable, often disappearing into whirlwind nights of parties, jet-setting escapades, and decadent getaways. They were Hollywood's wildest couple, turning heads wherever they went. But behind closed doors, their relationship was unraveling under the weight of emotional volatility and substance abuse. Depp, already struggling with his own demons, found in Moss a muse who mirrored his inner turmoil. Moss, young and vulnerable despite her fame, was drawn into Depp's darker world, embracing it with reckless abandon. Theirs was not a balanced love. It was a battleground of passion and pain. Depp's temper, already infamous in Hollywood circles, flared often. One particularly infamous incident in 1994 saw him destroy a suite at the Mark Hotel in New York after an argument with Moss, resulting in his arrest. He blamed the mess on an armadillo. It was emblematic of their life together, chaotic, surreal, and spiraling. Yet for every explosive fight, there was an equally powerful reconciliation. Depp showered Moss with gifts, poems, and gestures of devotion. He would book entire floors of hotels to escape the paparazzi and create intimate worlds where they could exist without judgment. Moss later revealed that Depp was the only man who truly cared for her in that way, that he was the first person to show her what real love felt like. But love in this case was never enough. Their downward spiral was as dramatic as their rise. Moss, overwhelmed by anxiety and increasing dependence on substances, began missing jobs and showing up late to shoots. Depp's own career began to wobble under the weight of his off-screen antics as producers and directors began to question his reliability. The world watched as their picture-perfect love story turned into a cautionary tale. By 1997, the inevitable came. They broke up. Moss was devastated. She admitted it took years to recover, crying endlessly and feeling utterly abandoned. Depp, too, later expressed deep regret, admitting he failed to give her the support she needed. Their relationship, while iconic, had become a study in beautiful destruction. They loved each other deeply, but the damage they inflicted on themselves and on each other was irreversible. What remained was the legend of a love that, for a moment, burned hotter than anything Hollywood could script, and then vanished in smoke. Behind the facade of effortless, cool, and high-fashion allure, Johnny Depp and Kate Moss were unraveling. In real time, their lives a maelstrom of emotional volatility and mounting personal chaos. Their public appearances, dripping in grunge chic style, eyes bloodshot, hands entwined, spoke volumes to those who knew how to read between the lines. These weren't simply two young stars in love, they were two lost individuals clinging to each other in a whirlwind of late-night excess and emotional instability. The very things that made their bond so intense, the mutual attraction to danger, their shared disdain for authority, their immersion in the vices of the entertainment world also laid the groundwork for its implosion. They weren't just in love, they were addicted to each other's damage. The toxic patterns only intensified with time. Friends tried to intervene, often to no avail. Depp, whose career was soaring with increasingly complex roles, was simultaneously spiraling into a lifestyle riddled with alcohol, late-night binges, and erratic outbursts. Moss, meanwhile, was in the throes of a modeling career that demanded an impossible level of perfection, all while tabloids speculated endlessly about her alleged heroin use, eating disorders, and fragile mental state. The pressure cooker of fame, paired with their emotional dependency on one another, was a recipe for destruction. When they fought, it was seismic, screaming matches in five-star hotels, storming out of events, nights that ended with slammed doors and shattered glass. When they made up, it was equally dramatic. Lavish gifts, tearful apologies, passionate promises that things would change. But they never did. As the media feasted on every meltdown, the couple grew more reclusive, retreating further into their insular world. But even within that bubble, they couldn't escape themselves. The constant attention only heightened their paranoia and tension. Every camera flash reminded them of how public their private pain had become. And as the lines between performance and reality blurred, they stopped pretending to hold it together. Depp's erratic behavior became more pronounced on film sets, while Moss, often described by insiders as delicate and emotionally fragile, seemed increasingly lost. Their love, once magnetic, had turned into a suffocating force neither could control nor fully walk away from. Their story was no longer just about romance. It had become a cautionary tale of what happens when two people fall in love, not in spite of their demons, but because of them. Despite the outward glamour that surrounded Johnny Depp and Kate Moss, those closest to them knew the truth. They were living in a gilded cage, sealed off from reality by their fame, wealth, and emotional instability. Friends often said that the pair existed in a world of their own creation, one filled with lavish hotel suites, designer wardrobes, and the constant hum of champagne bottles popping, but devoid of grounding or healthy connection. It was not unusual for them to vanish for days at a time, skipping out on professional commitments, choosing instead to barricade themselves behind closed doors with bottles of wine and packs of cigarettes, communicating only with each other in their strange, codependent bubble. The relationship they had created was more of a storm shelter than a sanctuary, a place to hide from the judgment of the outside world, while losing themselves in each other's brokenness. Their emotional disconnection from reality was palpable, in quieter moments. Moss, overwhelmed by the intensity of their arguments and the endless waves of press intrusion, would often go silent for hours or even days, slipping into depressive spells that concerned those around her. Depp, who had always been prone to introspection and mood swings, would disappear into his own internal battles, retreating into alcohol, drugs, and escapism. In many ways, they were two people trying desperately to find peace in the midst of chaos, but instead only found more chaos in each other. Their emotional wounds, many stemming from childhood traumas, abandonment issues, and the isolating pressures of celebrity, manifested in unhealthy patterns of jealousy, possessiveness, and explosive arguments that could ignite at the slightest provocation. When they finally broke up in 1998, it was met with more resignation than shock. The signs had been there for months, increasing time apart, erratic public appearances, and whispered accounts of bitter arguments behind the scenes. Depp's immersion in the drug-fueled madness of fear and loathing in Las Vegas, only accelerated his descent into hallucinatory detachment, while Moss's erratic behavior at fashion events hinted at mounting personal turmoil. Their final days as a couple were marked more by avoidance than affection. Though neither went public with the details of the split, it was clear they could no longer survive the emotional toll of staying together. In the years that followed, both would grapple with the aftermath. Moss plunged deeper into substance abuse, her every move tracked by an unforgiving media hungry for scandal. The infamous 2005 cocaine scandal nearly ended her career as brands like H&M and Chanel distanced themselves, but Moss managed a remarkable comeback, rebranding herself as a fashion icon who had weathered the storm. She emerged from the wreckage tougher, more guarded, but also more respected for her resilience. Depp, meanwhile, remained one of Hollywood's most sought-after actors, but the cracks in his public image had begun to show. While he found temporary stability with Vanessa Paradis, the shadow of his relationship with Moss lingered. It had been a love that left a scar, one that shaped the way he approached intimacy and trust. His later entanglement with Amber Heard, which unraveled into an international scandal, seemed to echo the same themes of emotional volatility, public spectacle, and deep psychological wounds. In many ways, his relationship with Moss had been the beginning of a pattern, one that would follow him for decades. Looking back, the relationship between Johnny Depp and Kate Moss has taken on the aura of legend, its drama and passion etched into the cultural memory of the 1990s like a modern-day tragedy. Their love story reads less like a romance and more like a fable drenched in glamour, rebellion, and destruction. They weren't just celebrities. They were cultural archetypes, living embodiments of the decade's obsession with beautiful dysfunction. Every stolen glance, every public meltdown, every tabloid headline seemed to further cement their place as icons of chaotic love. And yet, beneath the spectacle, theirs was a deeply human story of two vulnerable souls trying, unsuccessfully, to make each other whole. In the years that followed, the myth of their relationship only grew. Fans romanticized their bond, fashion campaigns echoed their aesthetic, and countless articles tried to dissect what really went wrong. But those close to them understood that what they had wasn't sustainable. Their intensity, while intoxicating, was combustible. It was love built on the shifting sands of emotional trauma, addiction, and the suffocating glare of fame. In another life, one with less noise, fewer cameras, and more time, they might have found a version of their story that worked. But the world they inhabited didn't allow for quiet growth or gentle healing. The 1990s were about living fast, burning bright, and leaving scars. And in that arena, Johnny and Kate were the reigning champions. Their silence over the years has only added to the mystique. Both have largely avoided public retrospection about their time together, choosing instead to let the past remain untouched. But when Moss took the stand in 2022 during Depp's defamation trial against Amber Heard, her brief, clear statement that Depp had never pushed or harmed her resonated more deeply than any tabloid headline ever could. It wasn't just a defense, it was a rare moment of truth in a narrative clouded by years of speculation. Her words, calm and unwavering, offered a glimpse into a bond that, despite all its turbulence, was never cruel in the way many had assumed. There was no bitterness, no dramatics, just a simple confirmation that, at least for a time, what they had was real. It was a quiet testament to a love that had long since burned out, but still cast a shadow. A sign that even the most volatile relationships can leave behind something tender amid the wreckage. Today, the love affair between Johnny Depp and Kate Moss exists in the collective memory like a dream tinged with both allure and tragedy. It's the kind of story that feels almost too cinematic to be real. Two of the most iconic figures of their time, impossibly beautiful and achingly troubled, thrown together in a whirlwind of passion, destruction, and raw emotional exposure. For many who lived through the 90s, theirs was the ultimate it couple, embodying a level of cool that couldn't be faked or manufactured. They were the poster children of rebellion and glamour, chain-smoking at the Met Gala, draped in designer fashion while reeking of last night's party. Photographs of them from that era still circulate today with an almost mythical reverence, as though they captured lightning in a bottle. but the admiration is often laced with disbelief, a recognition of how toxic things truly were beneath the surface. In an age before mental health conversations were mainstream and before social media exposed celebrity lives in real time, the darkness of their relationship remained obscured, rumored, hinted at, but never fully seen. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, their story is reframed not just as a glamorous thrill ride, but also as a stark warning about the toll of emotional instability and the isolating effect of stardom. They weren't just battling each other, they were also wrestling with their own demons, amplified by a media culture that romanticized dysfunction and rarely questioned the price of fame. Depp and Moss were indeed a product of their era, but they were also victims of it. Their love burned bright, fast, and without boundaries, too volatile to last, too memorable to fade. There was never going to be a white picket fence ending for them. Instead, their romance left behind a legacy of smoky nostalgia and haunting beauty. It was a love that couldn't survive, but also couldn't be forgotten. It still lingers in the cultural imagination like a melancholic ballad, echoing from tabloid pages, vintage fashion spreads, and the occasional comment in an interview. It's a story etched not in happily ever afters, but in the unrelenting ache of what was and what could never be.